everyone that's here for Marvel Rivals, I highly recommend the game, and you should play it if you like hero shooters, Overwatch, or fun multiplayer chaos in general. There's a great free launch roster of characters, 33 of them. It has a great, interesting art style, unique character kits that kind of make you relive the fantasy of being that character. Team-up attacks and destruction make everything feel different. No one feels weak. It's frantic and chaotic at times, but it's also very fun and it's focused on that fun. So if any of that sounds interesting, then you can download it. It's free. It's available on Epic and Steam and Xbox, PlayStation. Not available on Switch. Maybe possibly a Switch 2 in the future, but overall I highly recommend the game. Definitely think it's worthwhile and worth time investing into. Okay, now on to everyone that's here for a different thing. I posted a clip to this channel that was basically a 2-minute clip showcasing the opening minute of an Overwatch 2 match and a Marvel Rivals one. I titled the video showing you why Marvel Rivals is incredible. I didn't expect it to get any attention, especially since I had already posted the normal Just Gems video I had already done for that week. A lot of people in this clip were mad and commenting about how I showcased Overwatch 2 in a bad light by showcasing a bad character in an open queue against 2 tanks. My response to that is ultimately this. This clip here is meant to show my average experience with Overwatch and Marvel Rivals. This is not an attempt to trash Overwatch 2, simply to show the difference between both games that they tend to take with things like movement and character kits. It is representative of me and how it feels to play both games. The Overwatch 2 clip isn't comparable directly to something like Marvel Rivals because I don't play Overwatch 2 like I play Marvel Rivals due to those characters. It was the very best way, at least to me, to visually represent what it felt like to play the game. It feels kind of stagnation with Overwatch and a feeling of engagement with Rivals when it comes to how both of those games use characters and movement. It doesn't mean that Overwatch 2 can't have intense moments or is a bad game in any way, but to me that clip perfectly encapsulates what it means to play both games. And as you can see on the screen, I'm kind of showing you the Overwatch clip, showing you more of the match as well as the Marvel Rivals comparison there. For a little bit more context, I initially stopped playing role queue in Overwatch 2 when Overwatch 2 came out due to some tank balancing issues that I had in Season 1 and Season 2. Once that was fixed, I stopped role queue in general because I needed to kind of unlock characters, or characters were locked behind the Battle Pass grind that I didn't want to do, so it left me at a disadvantage when I was trying to combat the new heroes. I didn't really know what they did or any things like that, because I wasn't able to play them and get used to them due to that Battle Pass lock. Most of my Overwatch 2 time because of that was spent in arcade and open queue, with my mains being Sombra and Oriza. Once again, they have chopped off Sombra's feet in this update, and so she can no longer go invisible and no longer plants a teleport device, making her pretty linear and not that fun. This led me to playing other DPS like Mai and Bastion. I also play Cassidy in this clip for this match. I shouldn't have to play one of 3 specific designated DPS characters to have what most people believe is the correct or representative experience. Why is it that playing Mai or Bastion, Cassidy, or Soldier 76 is seen as an inaccurate representation of the game? I'm genuinely curious as to why the Overwatch community views it that way. I have also seen a number of people saying that I showed the game in a bad or unfair light because I didn't show an amazing clip of Genji or Tracer or Doomfist. And I kind of think that's a little bit of the point. I'm not going to highlight or cherry pick an experience for a game that I don't have. If I don't think Overwatch 2 is that fun and there's issues with it, and I main Mai, that is not a wrong opinion. That is my experience with the game. You can't just ignore half of the roster because they're seen as low tier or inadequate. Anyways, now on to why everyone's actually here, which is Marvel Rivals. So if you notice anything from their Marvel Rivals gameplay clip, you might notice a couple of things, and I'll say what I noticed. For me, Marvel Rivals is dynamic, almost frantic with its energy and pace, and to me that's quite exhilarating. The character kits, the movement options you have for each character, especially tanks, the chaos around that third-person view, the teamwork, the way the camera works and the way you're able to see things, the damage done, the healing done, the amount of deployable items there are, the ultimates and the creativity of them, and the team-up powers all lend something that becomes very fun. Everything about the structure of the game is designated for frantic split-second fun. This is not a very balanced game yet, which is actually why I think it works so well. It's not trying to be an esport. It's not sanding down the characters into being competitively viable or organized. Every character feels very strong, meaning they can all cause massive shifts in the tide of battle. And ultimately, I think to break down why this is, I've compiled 6 broad game design decisions that let Marvel Rivals characters be so strong and so fun without breaking the game. The first one is a lot more movement options for things like tanks, DPS, and healers. Examples include Thor's Rush ability, Captain America's Sprint, Venom Web Swing, Bucky Grappling Hook, etc. All lend, especially to tanks, more movement that you don't see in Overwatch. The second thing is more deployables. Stuff like Jeff Bubble, stuff like Rocket Armor, Moon Knight having a deployable Ankh, and other things for damage as well, which is really cool. You have things like Penny's Web and grenades. Again, for a tank, having deployables like that is quite unique and kind of builds up that character and that fantasy. You also have things like more characters, having more movement abilities, double jumps, wall runs, wall climbs. Hulk and Venom and Spider-Man, I believe, can all climb walls, right? Other characters like Punisher have a grappling hook that you're able to move. And so there's just way more options to move around the map and use movement to your advantage than there are in Overwatch. On top of that, the fourth thing, destruction and rebuilding. Obviously, you can press B to see all the destructibility things. For stuff like Hawkeye, that lets you take shots at angles you couldn't normally do if this was not a game with destruction. For things like rebuilding, you can obviously destroy floors above and below people to have openings that way. Rebuilding reconstructs those things to block sight lines and everything else. And so you can kind of create your own sort of way that a character can work. If you're being choked out, but there's a wall next to you that you can destroy, all of a sudden you're not being choked out anymore. You can go around that because you can destroy stuff, right? So that is the fourth thing. The fifth thing is the third-person camera in general. Allows things like third-person peeking around corners. That's much easier. Understanding where people are coming from at a general location is way easier in third person than it is in first person. And so the last thing, kind of relating to all that, is how much it feels like other characters are contributing at any given point due to those things mentioned above. Tanks having more movement, DPS having a lot of damage, support having damage and crazy healing. I'll go into that a little bit more. Tanks can feel like they have tanks and tankable things to them, right? Without having 5 times the amount of health that other characters have. And you can do that because the healing is a lot. You can juice the damage out of DPS to allow them to 4-shot tanks because you can rely on those tanks having more movement options to avoid that damage. You can make support fun because you can now allow them to do damage. Since the damage is so high, the scaled back damage healers do is still really good. Healers can feel fun because they're doing damage. The healing is high because the damage is high. Those are kind of inverses. The movement is high because the healing is high. You need high movement in order to kind of have some way to nerf healing, because healing is really good, and so obviously you need high damage to be able to counter that, right? And so if you have played Overwatch, I would say the best comparison I can give you is that every DPS in Rivals feels like it has the potential to do like Bastion levels of damage, right? Very high Reaper levels of damage, that kind of thing. Every tank feels like Wrecking Ball. Every tank has a movement ability, has a swing ability, has that kind of thing that lends them a very feasible, usable, you never feel stuck, you never feel trapped being a tank. Tanks are very agile. In fact, Captain America is one of the quickest characters in the game, and he's a tank, right? For supports, every support, I would say, is kind of like Moira, not because that they have some magical, damage capability, but because a lot of the time they can heal themselves, right? Luna Snow and all these other ones can heal themselves. A lot of supports, as I said before, have deployables that are useful more than just yourself, right? You can affect things that are not just in your little sphere here. There are other Rocket's deployable, for example, is one that gives a passive ammo buff to a bunch of characters and increases attack speed, right? There's not really anything like that in Overwatch. I believe the life tree in one of the more recent ones is similar to that, but there isn't a lot of those kind of things in Overwatch. There's just ultimately a lot more happening and more options at any given point in Rivals than in Overwatch, and to me, that makes it infinitely more fun and exciting to play and to watch. My main right now is Bucky, because he has immense damage, a Roadhog-like hook, grappling hook, a projectile ball that does drop damage, which basically means anything flying can now get sunk to the ground by it being hit, kind of like gravity. It has a Doomfist level uppercut that does damage, and a repeatable Doomfist-style crash down ultimate that recharges on every kill. His gun gets ammo back if one of the other attacks that he has abilities hits, and his team-up power gives him infinite ammo and quicker attack speed when Rocket deploys that beacon I mentioned earlier. I have the ability to grab Iron Man, or Storm, or Spider-Man, or Venom, or Star-Lord out of the sky, uppercut them, shoot them about twice for the headshot, and unless they're going to be a tank like Venom, they'll be dead. You may say that that's a lot of damage. I say that damage is pretty average, because while in direct hit, that will kill if those characters are being healed in incapacity, they're not going to die. Healing is so effective in this game that my grab uppercut 2-shot combo will do half health to DPS if the DPS gets healed. You can go from almost dead to full in about 2 seconds with Luna Snow or Jeff's healing bubbles. You may say that healing is too strong now, but I'll say that healing is average, because tanks can defend so well due to their insane movement abilities, allowing them to defend the healer very easily. While massive damage is coming to tanks, they're being healed very fast so they can survive much longer. This sort of trifecta ultimately works because it still feels like DPS, and as a DPS, you are doing a lot of damage to tanks. It's just that they are being healed, meaning the solution to the problem is pretty obvious. In Overwatch, when 2 tanks rush out, which I know, obviously, at this current moment, 5v5, usually speaking with a role queue, you're not going to have 2 tanks, but in open queue and in the new 6v6 mode that's being tested right now, there's going to be 2 tanks, so when 2 tanks rush out, there is no clear way to get around them. They have so much health and shields specifically that you can have 4 DPS and still take a long time to kill a tank. It doesn't feel like there's a way around them unless you have another tank in to stall. In Rivals, I don't need to wait for a tank to stall other tanks. I can just get in and cause damage. I can count the healing and other DPS characters to pick up the slack on my team because they also do damage. It gives me so much more agency as a DPS that I can contribute to even if I don't get the kill, because I can rely on other people to also be helping out. It isn't reliant solely on me just to be doing damage. In the Overwatch clip, and even in the rest of that game that I showed you a little more of, I had to wait around and protect myself until another tank came in to suck up the damage that was being dealt from Roadhog. Mai, for example, does not have the equivalent damage to a DPS that she should, obviously, or ultimately. The damage to Mai really feels like an equivalent of an average healer DPS in Rivals. Most DPS in Overwatch feel pretty weak and unable to do any kind of damage, especially against tanks. That is interesting, though, I do want to mention, because from what I've seen, at least, Mai's damage is not that low, especially if you try and compare it, and I have compared it and done spreadsheets, and I have all that footage there of comparing the direct damage output from Mai to other characters, and they're about the same. In fact, a lot of the characters, like Hela's really strong in Rivals right now. Hela does lower damage to the equivalent tanks in Rivals than Mai does with headshots, right? Mai can 4-headshot Winston, and Hela is not a 4-shot on the equivalent Winston in the game. And so, you know, the damage actually isn't that much lower. People saying, oh, Mai's really low damage. She actually isn't low damage. In fact, I think Genji is one of the lower damage, just on a direct damage level for a DPS. But it feels weak because you don't have that interplay between the 3 things, as I mentioned before. The closest kind of one-to-one character in Rivals that they come from Overwatch is Star-Lord and Hawkeye. Star-Lord is very similar movement and damage type to Tracer, and Hawkeye is similar to Hanzo. Hawkeye is a little bit too strong right now with the headshots being a one-shot. Overall, even with that being nerfable, he does much more damage. Star-Lord movement is insane. The kind of, the Reaper ability, ultimate, he has that as just one of his normal abilities, and that's really good for damage and kind of spreads everywhere. I think Spider-Man also has one as his ult, but that kind of thing really does good for damage, and Tracer can't really compete with that. So overall, even if Star-Lord's damage from his guns is, about the same as Tracer, he has many more options to do way more damage than Tracer does. Even if things like that don't result in more damage overall, more for Rivals, they feel like they do. You can see the health bars going down quicker. That gives the player now an ability to see their damage is actually meaningful and see how to make that damage make an impact for kills. The objective now for most DPS is to take out the healers. This already gives the game a more push and pull feel. DPS are targeting the opposing healers, tanks are targeting the opposing DPS who are trying to stop your team's healer, and healers target tanks to keep them alive through the DPS avalanche. Everyone involved has an agenda and a purpose, which makes everything feel more fun. More options in more places with a focus on character expression and maximized gameplay is ultimately what Marvel Rivals is about. They give you more things to do in more places with a variety focus that allows for character expression and maximize gameplay, or maximalism in general, results in a barrage of fun characters doing fun things all the time. I was actually watching the skill up review that Austin did for Marvel Rivals, and he had an analogy for soccer, and funny enough, I had an analogy here for Valorant, and our analogies are pretty similar in that if Valorant is a competitively balanced, pure expression of skill, Marvel Rivals is the bullshit, crazy Fortnite everything approach, and in this case, it works very well. Everything up to this point hasn't even been mentioning things like the team-up powers. Bucky's team-up power is a passive with Rocket and Punisher that lets him, obviously when Rocket things down, get infinite ammo and a attack speed buff, but a lot of the other 14 combinations are extra abilities. Jeff and Groot team up to let Jeff ride Groot, Hulk throws Wolverine, Venom lets Spider-Man turn on Venom defense, Doctor Strange lets magic teleport, portal, etc. They are small additions, but they are very meaningful ones that haven't been fully explored yet. On a more granular level, all heroes are unlocked by default, now and for the future, and all new game modes, maps, and other gameplay events will be free. We have an event coming up for the winter one, and the Jeff skin's free. The new game mode introduced, which is kind of like a Splatoon kind, is also free. The Battle Pass that some people are complaining about does need a little bit of work in terms of how you progress, but it does not expire, so you can work towards any Battle Pass that you want by going to the Nexus point shop in the top right of the season screen. You can also earn the premium currency by doing specific challenges. Those are a little bit harder, but you can earn units that you can convert 1-to-1 to the Lattice to be able to buy skins with units, and then for Lattice, it's Battle Pass. So you can earn and grind and get Battle Pass, and the Battle Pass then gives you more units and Lattice. They're basically interchangeable. Lattice is used right now just for Battle Pass, and units are used for buying skins, and you'll get units by doing challenges. You can then convert that into Lattice if you want to do Battle Pass, and the Battle Pass will give you both units and Lattice. It's kind of a 1-to-1 exchange, but it works pretty well so that you can earn both skins and the Battle Pass for free by just grinding the game and doing specific points and that kind of thing, which I think is very good. Those are basically the two things I mentioned in my video on the Marvel Rivals launch that I did, but there are some other details in that video you might want to check out, regarding stuff like character kits and technical performance. The only thing that should be added to the game now, ultimately, is just more objectives, as there's only Kill Confirm, Capture the Area, and Escort right now, as well as a competitive mode. The 4 areas of concern right now, generally speaking, are things like balance, which obviously it's 33 characters, it's team-up attacks, it's going to be kind of iffy on balance right now, but I do think that by the end of Season 0, we are going to see a balance patch, and they do seem pretty responsive to feedback so far, so that's good. Obviously, as we talked about before, Battle Pass progression is a important thing. Right now, it's only available and earnable through the challenges that you do, and there's no ability to earn it through just playing the game. I, however, haven't noticed too much of a problem because I have a decent amount of those tokens that you get. The only concern I have right now for the tokens is that they reset at the end of the Battle Pass, even if your Battle Pass doesn't. So that could be a little bit annoying. And the fact that, especially on the free tier and even on the paid tier, it is not a complete, it's not like a Fortnite approach where they used to like complete a set amount of them and then unlock the next one. It's gain enough tokens. And so you're kind of limited by like not being able to use the tokens you have until you have way more. So like I'm right now on the first page, just finished the first page, but I can't go to the second page until I get 970 more tokens, even though I don't want anything else to spend the tokens on the first page, that kind of thing, right? Overall, not too concerned about that. We haven't seen where the Battle Pass ultimately goes and what it is, but there are some pretty cool things on the Season 0 one, some new skins that you can earn for free without having to pay anything, and obviously, as you said, if you want to, you can grind for that if you don't want to spend money. The other two areas of concern, so obviously balance and Battle Pass progression, there's roll queue. They have said multiple times they're probably not going to implement a roll queue. It may be something that's an option later on, but right now they don't want to be sort of hamstringing the ability for you to do team composition and team-up attacks with something like roll queue. You may see like a soft limit of some kind later on, which I would be fine with, but right now there's not an idea for roll queue unless obviously something changes. And skin pricing is the last thing. A lot of people, the skin prices seem to be okay right now. There's not a, no telling if more expensive skins are going to be added later. But overall, I think skin prices are okay now. As I mentioned in that launch video, they're about $14 if you just want the skin. They're $16 to $18 if you want a bundle. And then if there's like a specific movie tie-in, so like a movie tie-in of No Way Home or Avengers Endgame, those are going to be $22 to $26. But they include the skin, the MVP animation, and some emotes and stuff. So I think that's pretty reasonable for a free game, especially when, again, it's free and there's a good amount there right now. So I don't see that being too much of an issue currently. And obviously, as I said before, balancing is going to be a nightmare because you have 33 launch heroes and team-up attacks and all that. So some standout issues that I've noticed and a couple other people have talked about for balance. If you're jumping in the game and you're kind of, is the game in a state that's functional right now? I would say yes, it is. You don't have to worry about like things being severely broken or the character's really strong and not fixing it or anything like that. I would say, generally speaking, Hawkeye is the strongest character because he can one-shot you or two-shot you. But overall, everything else, it has a decent amount of counter to it, and even then, Hawkeye does have a good amount of counters. And so you don't have to really worry about going in and getting swamped by a bunch of characters that are really overpowered. everyone kind of has the juice to be able to squirm out of whatever situation they're in. So I think that's kind of important, because what I'm about to mention is some characters that are very strong. That doesn't mean that they're like broken or destroying the game or anything, but it does mean that, you know, you have to watch out for them. Hela's really strong right now. Hawkeye, there's direct damage. Iron Fist survivability, he has like a protect shield that's like really strong. Jeff's ult being able to eat people, jump off the map, and kill everyone in there. People don't like that. Captain America's damage being very high for a tank, and the quality of his running. All that. And so, you know, be watching out for those, and make sure, you know, you can defend against them, but they're not things that are going to necessarily break the game and become, you know, unusable. So I would think overall I really enjoy this game due to its engaging nature with the heroes, the destruction, the variety, and the options to any given hero kit, given its mobility, damage, healing trifecta, that really allows each combat encounter to feel exciting. I want to be very clear again, just for anyone that came here for the clip and maybe stayed, and I thank you. Also, thank you for the support on all the videos recently and all that. It does mean a lot. We're getting somewhere here, and I really do appreciate that clip kind of blowing up a little bit. But I also want to say that, you know, this isn't anything to bash on Overwatch or say Overwatch is worse or inferior game. You know, it has intense moments, it has things I do like about it, but it's ultimately down to, you know, certain characters and interactions that I just don't feel like, for me, are as exciting as what Rivals is doing right now, right? For example, the focus on tank rush instead of healing rush means that if you're playing open queue like I do, you'll get a lot of situations like the clip where you can't really do enough damage and you need to wait for tanks to stall because you have two tanks that are doing so much shield and so much healing and so much everything else that you can't really get through. But ultimately, like, I really enjoy the game, and I think both games deserve success, and it's just really exciting to have something that I can point to. The clip's purpose was to point to and say, this is why I feel like Overwatch isn't working, and this is why Rivals is working for me, because it has these things I've hopefully explained in the video. So hopefully that made sense. If you have your opinions, obviously leave them down in the comments. If you're interested in watching the clip, it's the last video on the channel, has like almost 2,300 views, so thank you for that. Thank you for the comments, the engagement, all that. And yeah, hopefully you enjoyed this, and I'll see everyone in the next video.